The exact moment I walked into the glass boardroom, the suffocating stench of expensive perfume told me my 20-year career was ending. Sitting at the mahogany table was Peyton, the spoiled daughter brought in to replace her retired father, wearing an arrogant grin that screamed complete incompetence. She looked at me like I was a piece of trash interrupting her morning coffee, entirely clueless that the enterprise rested on my shoulders. Peyton cleared her throat with an obnoxious rattle and announced that my position as director of core architecture was being eliminated as redundant legacy clutter. She tossed a severance packet across the table, boasting that the company was pivoting toward artificial intelligence and modern cloud systems. The silent board members stared at their hands, terrified of her father, completely unaware of the massive trap they were walking into. I did not cry or plead for my job, but instead dropped my security badge onto the mahogany table with a loud clack. I calmly informed Peyton that she had precisely 10 minutes before the physical servers stopped receiving my custom authentication handshake. Once that security signal expired, every transaction gateway across the whole system would immediately freeze, bringing all customer payment operations to a complete standstill. Peyton mocked my warning, claiming her tech team had all the administrator passwords necessary to run the infrastructure. I smiled politely and reminded her that holding passwords to a dashboard does not grant ownership over the physical hardware powering the engine. I had leased those servers to the firm under a personal contract that expired the second my employment ended, leaving her 7 minutes before total blackouts. I turned around and walked out of the corporate tower into the scorching Texas heat without looking back at the nervous receptionist. Climbing into my heavy truck, I tossed the severance envelope onto the passenger seat and headed toward a quiet neighborhood bar. I was not panicking because I knew my proprietary code was about to execute a completely legitimate cutoff, proving my true worth. Inside the dimly lit tavern, I ordered a neat glass of whiskey and set my phone timer directly on the counter. When the digital clock struck 0, the internal employee chat app began exploding with automated alerts regarding catastrophic gateway failures. The dead man switch I coded years ago was officially shutting down traffic, yet I sat in peace enjoying my cold drink while watching the storm begin. To understand this collapse, you must realize that this enterprise began 20 years ago inside a dusty garage alongside Vance, the father of Peyton. Back then, Vance had incredible ambition but terrible credit, while I provided the technical genius and personal financial backing to build our first hardware nodes. I formed my own separate company, Ironclad Systems, leasing the physical server hardware back to Vance under a strict conditional contract. That founding agreement specifically stated the server lease remained valid only while I was employed as chief architect of the company. When Vance retired to Florida and handed authority over to his daughter, Peyton immediately treated me like an overpaid dinosaur. She had no idea that by firing me to cut payroll costs, she was automatically terminating the legal lease that kept her digital kingdom running. Monitoring the engineering channels from my phone, I watched absolute chaos erupt among the junior software developers. They were frantically rebooting routers and flushing caches, completely ignorant of the fact that the actual physical servers were refusing their domain connection. Peyton even posted a message accusing me of deliberate sabotage, totally failing to grasp that she had simply lost access to hardware she never owned. My phone rang with an incoming call from Carson, the newly hired temporary executive Peyton brought in to modernize operations. He breathlessly demanded the root system credentials, but I reminded him that providing access to systems after termination violates federal computer laws. When I revealed that my independent holding firm owned the actual physical server racks in Dallas, Carson fell completely silent in utter shock. By late afternoon, angry customer complaints were trending across social media as credit cards were declined at stores nationwide. To make matters worse, an automated system error dumped raw internal logs directly into the public company chat room for everyone to see. Employees were shocked to discover Peyton had just charged $100,000 private jet charter for a personal vacation while claiming there was no budget for bonuses. I drained my glass, paid the bartender, and immediately instructed my attorney David to initiate formal contract enforcement against the firm. Peyton and her clueless management team had managed to alienate the entire workforce within hours, turning a simple technical outage into a full-blown corporate mutiny. My legal representative prepared to issue a formal defense, pointing directly to the signed lease agreement from 2 decades prior. Later that evening, Vance frantically called my personal line from his Florida vacation home after hearing about the corporate disaster. He pleaded with me to turn the servers back on for old time's sake, offering double my previous salary and promising to fire his daughter. I calmly explained that turned-off hardware was not a personal grievance, but a direct legal consequence of his daughter terminating my employment. During a tense legal conference call, Peyton screamed that I was holding her corporate data hostage and threatening her family legacy. My attorney quickly intervened, pointing out that her company was free to pick up their physical hard drives, though they lacked hardware capable of running them. When they offered to purchase the servers on the spot, I flatly refused, keeping total control over my custom encryption scripts. Within 48 hours, the catastrophic downtime forced major institutional clients to abandon the failing firm and search for alternatives. The national director of our largest client reached out directly, asking if I could host their data processing under a brand new enterprise. I officially registered Southstar Tech, hired back the top original engineering staff, and transferred client volume directly onto my fully functioning servers. Vance arrived at my Texas residence looking exhausted and broken, begging for a way to save his crumbling enterprise from complete bankruptcy. I stood on my porch and told him that his biggest client had already signed with my new venture, ending any hope of recovery. He realized too late that giving absolute authority to his spoiled child had cost him the very foundation he spent decades building. Months later, the old firm filed for complete bankruptcy liquidation, and I purchased their remaining client lists for a fraction of their value. Peyton was ousted from management, while Vance remained retired, watching my new firm thrive with superior technology and highly paid engineers. I brought back the core team that built the original foundation, giving them higher salaries and real equity in our new venture. True power in business does not come from high titles, fancy suits, or sitting at the head of a mahogany boardroom table. Real authority lies within the invisible infrastructure, the physical hardware, and the dedicated people who keep the lights burning bright every single day. When you foolishly discard the genuine architect of your success, you quickly discover that your impressive empire was nothing more than an empty shell.